Hello, my name is Mark Saunders and this is a YouTube video presentation on transcribing interviews, looking at the practice of transcribing and the symbols you use. It's part of my YouTube series Mark Saunders on research methods, and you can see the address for this on the bottom left hand corner of each slide. In this video presentation we're going to be looking at transcribing, and we're going to be looking at transcribing of text once it's been typed. So it's the symbols we add to the transcriptions. So we can also use this with when we've used automatic transcription and had to clean it. We're going to start off by understanding what we mean by transcribing, and then we're going to move to looking at the commonly used transcription symbols, looking at the Jefferson symbols. Then we're going to take a transcript and then see how we add these symbols in practice, looking at labels, how we describe what's happening, pauses, emphasising things, humour, and then how do we make sure the transcript is completely clean before we actually start analysing it, perhaps using template analysis, alternatively using thematic analysis. And then we'll finish with references and further reading. So let's start off by what we understand by transcribing. When we say something is transcribed, it means it's been reproduced verbatim as a normally word processed account. And this can happen automatically, such as if we're in a Zoom meeting, or we can actually transcribe it afterwards. And when we do this transcribing, we're capturing what the person said and what we said as an interviewer, or indeed what people said if it's a focus group, the way they said it in terms of how fast they were talking, their reluctance, such as pauses, the tone of their voice, and other non-verbal communication, such as the moving of hands and perhaps laughing. Alongside this, obviously with our transcript, we'll note down contextual information such as the location, the time of day, and what was happening if it's in an organisation, perhaps if it was during a redundancy period or something like that. And within this, we're going to emphasise that it's helpful to use specific transcription symbols. So now let's have a look at these transcription symbols. These are what we call commonly used transcription symbols, and this comes from the Jefferson transcription symbols. So if somebody pauses when they're talking and then starts talking again, the dots in between brackets represent the relative length of that pause. Sometimes we might actually time the pause, and if that's the case, we put a number representing the pause in brackets, so number 3. Sometimes when people are talking, they interrupt each other and they talk over each other, and we can signify this by overlapping speech by using square brackets. Sometimes people talk very, very quickly, and as the pace of speech increases, we can do that by putting that in the brackets, which are like sort of sound trumpets. Alternatively, the space or pace of speech may go slower, and here we signify that with brackets the other way round. Also, sometimes we're unclear what people are saying, and if we don't know at all, we just actually have brackets with nothing in them, and this means we're unclear what's being said, but something has been said. Alternatively, we think we know what they said, but we're not certain. So if somebody said fluke, but we're not sure they said fluke, we could put that word in brackets. We also have people doing things that's going on. So they might go cough, and then we can put that in double brackets, and that description of what's happening always happens in double brackets. So we can talk about perhaps how people are wringing their hand, rubbing them together. As people's voices get louder, we can actually emphasise that by putting a line underneath it. And when people are shouting, we use capital letters. People's intonation rises up and down as they talk, and we can represent this just by an up arrow or a down arrow. Also, sometimes when people are talking, they emphasise a certain sound or syllable in a word, and we can do that by putting colons in the word or by the sound. And finally, when people laugh, we can just put a little brackets H representing humour. So let's look at our transcript, and here we have a transcript where what we've decided to do is to put the words that the interviewer is saying in italics and then the response from the participant just in normal text. And we can see here the interviewer is saying, so tell me, why do you use the student union bar? And then the respondent says, well, a lot of my friends there go there for the final drink of the evening. There is an atmosphere and the drinks are cheap. I don't feel embarrassed to walk in on my own, and there's always somebody to talk to and scrounge a cigarette off. So now let's see how we'd label that. To start off, we would use capital labels to label the interviewer and the participant, and we don't necessarily have to use italics, as you can see here. We would sometimes distinguish by italics, and on the label in here we're distinguishing that the first participant is a female and they're a student, with 1 referring to the first, F referring to female, and S referring to student. Then we've got what's actually happening, and here, as you remember when you listened to the short transcript, there was a breathe in, and now we can see that in the double brackets. The relatively brief pause after breathe in was signified by 2 dots, but then there was a longer pause later, and this was about 2 seconds, and so we put that in brackets afterwards. The word final, as the participant was talking, was emphasised, so again we can underline that, and towards the end they actually laughed when they talked about scrounging a cigarette. And so now what we need to do is to actually clean our transcript. And one thing to remember is when we've got more structured interviews where you've actually got numbered questions, we actually do talk about that and number the questions on our transcript. And always, please do check the transcript for accuracy and amend if necessary. This is really, really important if you're using an automatic transcription, such as from a Zoom meeting or indeed a Teams call. We're now going to look at references and further reading. My own book with Phil and Adrian, Research Methods for Business Students, has a little discussion about transcription and transcription symbols in chapter 13. Silverman's book, a very short, fairly interesting and reasonably cheap book about qualitative research, also talks about transcription and transcription symbols. And finally, University Transcriptions, a company I haven't used, has a useful website which talks about the Jefferson transcription system and gives a good guide to the symbols. However, I would stress I've never used this company. I'm just saying it's a great website.